Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to focus on the Titanic, specifically on one of the most famous conspiracy theories surrounding this legendary ship. This particular theory claims that the Titanic never actually sank. It's 1912. The world is on the cusp of war. Industrial tycoons wield unimaginable power, and the public is utterly obsessed with the unsinkable marvel of modern engineering, the RMS Titanic. Then, in one fateful night, everything changes. Or does it? What if the disaster we've been told about for over a century was an elaborate lie? A lie so deep, so deliberate, that it fooled the entire world? Of course, I assume you've all seen the movie Titanic, but let's go over some basic facts anyway. The Titanic sank on April 15, 1912, in the Atlantic Ocean after colliding with an iceberg. Around 1,500 people died on board, which amounted to about 3/4 of all passengers. It was the most luxurious ship of its time, featuring grand staircases, a squash court, a Turkish bath, and electric elevators, all designed to impress. But behind the grandeur was a ship rushing to meet deadlines, facing pressures from financiers, press, and prestige. The Titanic's construction was plagued with odd coincidences. Worker strikes, delayed launches, and even a near collision during sea trials. The ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, reportedly made last-minute changes to the lifeboat arrangements, reducing the count from 48 to 20. Was this negligence or intentional? Naturally, such a massive disaster drew the attention of the public and the media. And with that, wild conspiracy theories started popping up. People couldn't believe that a ship so widely claimed to be unsinkable could sink on its very first voyage. One theory claimed that the Titanic was carrying cursed artwork, which caused the sinking. Another said it had been hit by a German torpedo. But one of the most well-known theories is the one we'll dive into today, that the Titanic never actually sank. This theory is largely based on a book by Robin Gardner titled Titanic, the Ship That Never Sank. The main idea of this theory is that the Titanic was actually the RMS Olympic in disguise. These two ships belong to the same company, White Star Line, and the theory goes that Olympic, after making several voyages between Britain and the US, had become severely worn down. The company was losing money on it and struggling to maintain public confidence. Olympic had a few design flaws, was slower than expected, and suffered from vibration issues. Worse, passenger reviews were mixed, causing trust to waver. In 1912, Olympic had a collision with another ship, the HMS Hawk, but the insurance company refused to pay out. It was determined that Olympic was at fault, so White Star Line had to cover the costs, which were significant. Around the same time, they were finishing construction on the Titanic, a massive and expensive project, adding to their financial burden. So, what did they allegedly decide? They supposedly altered Olympic's appearance to look like Titanic. Because the two ships were nearly identical sister ships, this wouldn't have taken much effort, just enough to make the public believe one ship was the other. Even shipyard workers might not have known the difference. A simple change in nameplates, lifeboat markings, and interior finishes would be enough. And most people had never seen either ship in person, making the deception all the more plausible. They could simply swap the lifeboats, which had the ship names on them, and repaint the name on the hull. The interiors were almost identical, so no major renovation would have been needed. The whole switch could have been completed in a single weekend, the theory claims. According to this version of events, White Star Line deliberately sent out the Olympic disguised as the Titanic, planning for it not to return. The Olympic was allegedly in such poor condition that they even placed a bomb in the lower part of the ship. So what would they gain from this? At the time, Titanic was the newest and largest ocean liner in the world. If it sank, the insurance payout would be enormous, and the company would get back a lot of the money it had lost. I know it sounds insane, but the theory is backed by some peculiar evidence. For example, Olympic had 16 portholes on the bow, while Titanic had only 14. But when Titanic set sail, it mysteriously had 16 portholes too. Some argue it would have been too difficult and costly to cut 2 new holes into the steel structure just for show. It made no sense. And yet, the photos don't lie. The porthole count clearly matches Olympic, not Titanic. So either the design was changed at the last minute or the hull belonged to another ship entirely. When the Titanic was discovered decades later, researchers examined the engines. They found serial number 401. Nothing strange there. Titanic's build number was 401. But those very same engines were supposedly installed on Olympic back in 1911. So how could they be on Titanic? Now, I personally don't believe anyone would be so heartless as to kill over 1,500 people just for insurance money. But the theory adds that no one was actually supposed to die. A rescue ship, the Californian, was meant to be nearby, ready to evacuate everyone. They thought the ship would sink slowly enough for help to arrive. But something went wrong. Titanic allegedly collided with another ship instead of an iceberg. The Californian didn't expect this, and the chaos caused it to miss its rescue mission. Some say the Californian tried to contact Titanic, but the crew was too busy or overwhelmed to respond. Others believe their radio operator had gone off duty for the night. Robin's book even claims the other ship was unlit and that the crew mistook the impact for an iceberg collision because it all happened so quickly. Still, even with all this, the loss of Titanic or Olympic didn't cover all of White Star Line's costs. Robin also points out that Olympic's test voyage lasted 2 days, while Titanic's only took 12 hours, and it wasn't even at full speed. This, he says, supports the theory that Titanic was actually the older Olympic, unable to handle a longer voyage. Another supposed clue came from the wreck itself. Some paint peeled off, and beneath it, letters resembling MP for Olympic were reportedly visible. Photos exist, but many claim they're fake or manipulated. And honestly, if such proof really existed, we'd probably hear about it a lot more. It's still very debatable. According to some versions of the theory, powerful figures in the US government may have been involved. And one name that constantly appears is J.P. Morgan. Morgan was one of the most influential bankers of his time, and canceled his Titanic voyage just a day before the ship set sail. That alone has fueled plenty of suspicion. His biggest business rivals, John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus, were all on board and died in the disaster. Morgan was also the primary owner of White Star Line. Some say he orchestrated the sinking just to eliminate his competition. Another curious detail is that his friend, Milton Hershey, the founder of Hershey's Chocolate, had placed a $300 deposit on a Titanic ticket, but canceled at the last minute. That's added even more fuel to the conspiracy fire. Authors Jake and Leighton, who focus on such theories, also argue that Titanic and Olympic had different hull ID numbers. Olympic had 400, Titanic 401, and that no records prove they were ever switched. But despite all the speculation, this theory has never been officially confirmed. There is no solid, verified evidence to prove it beyond doubt. Another intriguing idea is that a fire broke out in the Titanic's lower decks even before departure. It reportedly burned for several days and weakened the steel hull. That could explain why the ship broke apart so easily after the collision. In fact, a 9-meter-long black mark was found on the side of the Titanic wreck, which could be evidence of that fire. Some claim the conspiracy isn't about one single cover-up, but about a chain of small lies that snowballed into a massive tragedy. Was it corporate greed, political maneuvering, a failed insurance scam gone wrong? Or was it simply a series of coincidences and mechanical failures that got out of control? And what do you think? Could there be some truth to it? I'd love to hear your opinion, so feel free to share it down in the comments. And if you enjoy these kinds of conspiracy theories, let me know what other case you'd like to hear about next. Take care, and see you in the next video. Bye.